Monday Night Raw delivered a confrontation that felt bigger than an ordinary face-to-face encounter. Oba Femi and Bron Breakker finally found themselves standing across from each other, and the tension was obvious from the moment Breakker stepped into the ring. This was not simply about two powerful young stars competing for attention. It was about pride, ambition, and the question of who WWE sees as the next major face of the company. Breakker entered the segment looking determined to get an answer, but what followed was very different from what he expected. Instead of getting the straightforward confrontation he wanted, he found himself caught in a situation where every word seemed to work against him. Femi remained composed throughout the exchange, and that calmness made his response even more effective. There was no need for shouting or a physical confrontation. The message was delivered through confidence, timing, and a few carefully chosen words. Oba Femi's rise. To understand why this confrontation mattered so much, it is important to look at the momentum behind Oba Femi. His recent rise has placed him in a completely different position within WWE. After his major victory over Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, Femi suddenly became one of the most talked-about stars in the company. The significance of defeating someone with Lesnar's reputation cannot be understated, especially when the victory was presented as a defining moment for the younger star. Instead of simply being another impressive win, it felt like WWE was announcing that Femi had arrived. Lesnar acknowledging Femi after their match only added to the moment. Suddenly, conversations about the future of WWE were no longer hypothetical. Fans had a new name to discuss, and Femi had the confidence to match the attention. That success naturally created pressure for other young stars who believed they should occupy that same position. Among them was Bron Breakker. Why Breakker took it personally. Bron Breakker has spent a long time establishing himself as one of WWE's most intense and physically imposing young performers. He has championship experience, a recognizable family legacy, and the kind of explosive athleticism that immediately separates him from many other wrestlers. So from his perspective, watching another young star receive so much attention was never going to be easy. Breakker has every reason to believe that he belongs in the conversation about WWE's future. That is what made his challenge so interesting. He was not simply looking for another match. He wanted recognition. He wanted Femi to acknowledge that he was standing across from someone who believed he could become the next major superstar. Instead, Breakker found himself facing an opponent who seemed completely comfortable with the idea that the spotlight had already moved in his direction. The question that started it all. Breakker walked into the ring and made his intentions clear. He wanted to know who truly represented the future of WWE. It was a simple question on the surface, but there was a lot behind it. Breakker was effectively challenging Femi to explain why he deserved the attention he was receiving. The interesting part was that the question did not produce the answer Breakker wanted. Paul Heyman became involved and turned the question back toward Breakker, creating an awkward moment that immediately changed the energy in the arena. Instead of allowing Breakker to control the conversation, Heyman made him wait. That is one of the most effective ways to handle a heated wrestling segment, because anticipation can sometimes be more powerful than action. Everyone knew Femi would eventually appear, but nobody knew exactly what he would say. By the time his music hit, the crowd was already waiting for the confrontation. Heyman changes the situation. Just when it appeared that Breakker and Femi might settle the issue physically, Paul Heyman stepped in with news that changed the entire direction of the segment. Rather than allowing the two men to fight on the spot, Heyman revealed that a match had already been arranged for September 6th at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. Suddenly, all of the frustration had a destination. Breakker wanted an immediate confrontation, but instead, he was given a bigger opportunity with higher stakes. The decision also meant that neither competitor could simply walk away from the issue. The argument had created a match, and now the audience had something to anticipate. What began as a question about who represents the future had turned into a direct test between two of WWE's most promising stars. The handshake that said plenty. One of the most interesting details came after the announcement. Heyman shook hands with Breakker, and then extended the same gesture toward Femi. On its own, a handshake might seem insignificant, but in the context of the rivalry, the visual carried plenty of meaning. Breakker has a history with Heyman, so seeing Heyman interact with Femi in such a calm and deliberate manner added another layer to the story. It created the impression that Heyman was comfortable standing between both men and allowing the rivalry to develop. For Breakker, that moment could easily feel like another reminder that he no longer controls the direction of the story. For Femi, it was simply another indication that he was not intimidated by the situation. A new generation rivalry. What makes this rivalry particularly exciting is that both men represent different versions of WWE's future. Breakker has the pedigree, experience, athleticism, and intensity that have made him a standout performer since arriving on the main roster. Femi, meanwhile, has built momentum through his own performances and has quickly developed an aura of confidence. Neither man needs to be presented as an underdog. Both can realistically believe they belong at the top. That makes their upcoming match far more interesting, because the story is not about whether either wrestler deserves to be there. It is about which one can prove that he deserves to be there more. September 6th could be a turning point. The biggest question now is what happens when the two finally meet in the ring. Will Breakker turn his frustration into motivation, or will the pressure surrounding the rivalry work against him? Can Femi continue performing with the same level of confidence when he faces someone who knows exactly how dangerous he can be? Those questions are what make the September 6th match so important. The Raw confrontation did not provide a final answer about who is destined to become the future of WWE. Instead, it created the perfect reason to watch the two competitors settle the argument inside the ring. For Breakker, this is an opportunity to prove that he cannot be overlooked. For Femi, it is another chance to show that his recent rise was not a temporary moment. One thing is certain, after what happened on Raw, neither man can pretend the other does not matter anymore.